How's that? Okay. Ooh. All righty. So we've been working on this theme of creating a world that works for all. Our topic today is called Your Biggest Victim, You. I love the timing of certain things in life, don't you? And the Ernest Holmes quote that goes with this is, "What untold grief of heart might be relieved by words of cheer and forgiveness." I want to talk about this week because we've all been victims of this week. And I know victim isn't a good word to use in a religious science church, right? And yet, I was talking with a friend the other day that said, I've been having a little challenge in which I've been feeling overwhelmed, and I gave myself permission to feel like a victim for a little while and even throw myself a pity party. I knew I wasn't going to stay there. I knew it wasn't the core truth of me, but I just let myself feel what I felt for a little bit. And that's what I want to talk about today. Brené Brown says, she wrote this just earlier this week, a couple of days ago. "I woke up this morning looking for someone to blame, someone to hate, someone who I could make the single target of my fear about the officers killed in Dallas and the killing of Alton Sterling and Philando Castile. It was such a desperate feeling to want to discharge the uncertainty and scarcity. Then it dawned on me that this is the exact drive that fueled what's happening now. Instead of feeling hurt, we act out our hurt. Rather than acknowledging our pain, we inflict it on others. Neither hate nor blame will lead to the justice and peace that we all want. It will only move us further apart. But we can't forget that hate and blame are seductive. Anger is easier than grief. Blame is easier than real accountability. When we choose instant relief in the form of rage, we're in many ways choosing permanent grief for the world." So this week has been difficult for people who care. Have you noticed? My heart's hurting. I've seen a couple of other people on Facebook from our congregation posting how their hearts are feeling. And it's important to feel what we're feeling. It's important to feel what we're feeling, not to sweep it under the carpet, not to pretend it's not there, not to just go, "Oh, it's all good," but to really notice what's going on and to feel it and to pay attention within our own hearts. It's also important then to not strike out at or blame others, as Brené points out. It reminds me of the story that's been told for a long time of the boss who chews out one of his workers, and the worker goes home and reacts by chewing out his wife, who then goes and chews out the kids, who then goes and chews out the next kid down, who then goes and chews out the next kid down, and who finally kicks the cat. And the boss comes over to apologize to the guy for that, and the cat pees on his shoe. Okay? So we take it and keep on passing it along, but the hate and the pain doesn't go away. So I want to invite us to not fall into that cycle, to feel what we're feeling, as Brené says, but not to act it out, to notice it, but not look immediately for somebody to blame. Because what we're experiencing here is not a race issue. It's a different race issue. It's a human race issue. It's a human race issue. And what we're experiencing here is the result of a systematic belief that we've had in our culture, and I mean our human culture, for thousands of years, that we have the right to own and control other people, that we need to own and control our environment, and that if we don't control it, it's going to hurt us, which is a completely different consciousness than we live in a world that is safe with people who are safe, and we can start to trust that world in a different way. And so when the core problem is that we have a belief in separation. Any spiritual worker will tell you that the core belief that is underneath everything that is in our way is our belief in separation, our separation from spirit, our separation from each other, our separation from the planet, and even our separation from our own true self. We stop being our own true self because we feel we have to be somebody else in order to survive in society. Anybody relate? And so as we begin to come together, as we begin to recognize that there isn't a black people being shot, there isn't a police officers being shot, there's an us. This is us. This is all of us. then we start to say, how can I start to change it? How can I both take this personally, not in an unhealthy way, but notice that it lives within me? And where does that live within me? Where does that fear of each other live within me? Where does that belief that somebody who's not like me is dangerous? Can we look, here in Reading, we don't have a whole lot of racial diversity. Can we look at the people who are homeless and not look at them in fear? Not look at them in judgment? I remember one time in Seattle, I was standing on a street corner downtown waiting for the light to cross, and I noticed on the other side of the street waiting for the light to cross was an apparently homeless woman. And I noticed my immediate judgments and stuff came up. And we were about halfway across the street, and this woman just broke out into song with this glorious voice. Just started singing. She's the kind of woman who probably would do well on things like The Voice or America's Got Talent. And she was homeless. And I noticed that my judgments shifted. I suddenly saw the beauty of this being and not just her pain, which was clearly written on her face. Both existed simultaneously. Can we look at somebody who's different from us, perhaps somebody who's in pain, perhaps somebody who's in fear, and see past that fear, not ignoring it, not being foolish, but also seeing the truth of who they are, the deeper part of who they are? We've had the ideas of slavery, and of rules and judgment that control others, and punishment by throwing people in behind bars for a long, long time. And it's time to start examining that within ourselves. Where do we imprison ourselves? Where do we, within ourselves, start to discriminate against aspects of ourselves, punish aspects of ourselves, lock away aspects of ourselves? Because if I start to do that to you, I'm first of all doing it to me. And if I do it with me, I'm going to act it out with you. Can we start to open hearts? Can we start to open doors? Can we start to be in a dialogue with each other where we can pay attention and notice the differences and honor the differences? And instead of being afraid of them, be curious about them. I remember Gay Hendricks says one of the most wonderful practices is to be in a state of wonder. I wonder about this. I wonder about this. I'm curious about this. I want to know more. Can we start to be in that state? Can we start to be in that state, first of all, internally with our own self? Can we start to be in that state with the people we meet? Can we start to be in that state with the world? So we don't take what we're fed over the news wires, whatever news service you listen to, as face value, but start to say, I wonder what's the real truth of that. So it brings us back to the question, when we start to look at something like this, it's a question we've been playing with for the last few weeks. Whose business am I in? We talked about that there are three kinds of business to be in. There's mine, there's yours, and there's God's. By God's, it means that reality, that out there that we can't control. By mine, I mean the part that I can actually direct and control within my life. And yours is, guess what? The part that's yours to direct and control within your life. And one of the fastest ways to get out of being centered is for me to start to get into somebody else's business, that your business over there. Okay? And it's a great way to avoid being in my business, isn't it? Because I get to vacate my life and not look at that while I'm telling you how to live yours. Instead of looking and saying, where does that live within me? The only business to be involved in is my own business, which does not mean being insensitive to others. But the question then begins, what can I do? What can I do? How can I be? What am I being called to at this particular time? One of my friends posted a Facebook quote. It was by a mutual minister friend of ours. I want to read it here for just a moment. Because it describes where we're at in our culture right now. And sometimes we can look at what's happening and say, oh my God, it's so dark, it's so terrible. And this is Christy Hardwick says, toxins will create disease and they will seek release. Like in the body fevers, blisters, rashes, eruptions, the body will show its reaction before it shows its healing ability. The collective social body is erupting. The disease cannot be contained and must demonstrate, so we must admit we are sick and need to heal. See, this stuff has been going on for a lot longer than just the last couple of years, right? If you've watched the movie Selma, you got to see what it was like in the 60s. If you paid any kind of attention at all to American history, the discrimination against certain people, people of color, people who are different from the majority. If you paid attention to the Native Americans who used to live on this land as their own and had it taken away from them, you know that we've been culturally taking things away and being in this situation for a very long time. What's different, as somebody said, is now there are cameras everywhere. And there's Facebook, and we can all see it, and it all gets posted. One of the things that shifted, I remember from my youth, one of the things that shifted and got people angry and upset about the Vietnam War was the fact that the news cameras got into the war for the first time ever and were broadcasting at dinner time. And so you were sitting at the dinner table watching what was actually going on in Vietnam. And people started to realize this can't continue to go on. And more people started to be against the war. Today we have, these wonderful little things that we can get us in so much trouble sometimes, but can also free us in other ways. And so we can see what's really going on. And it can't be swept up under the rug anymore. And you know what? That's the good news. We have to understand what's going on. We have to admit we have a disease before we can start to take the cure, before we can start to be engaged in it. If I don't admit that I have something going on, I will probably not go and do what I need to do, right? I'll just pretend and let it sit there and do its thing until finally, it hits me so hard. There's that old, the universe sends you a whisper and a nudge and a 2x4 and finally a Mack truck. And so we just got a Mack truck in our culture this week, right? Anybody else notice? I'm sorry. Okay, good. We just got kind of a Mack truck, and there's a lot of pain. There's a lot of hurt. But the good news is we know where we stand. The good news is we can no longer sit there and go, racism doesn't really exist here. We're all good. Everything is so much better than it used to be. In some ways, by the way, that statement is true, but in other ways, what we're aware of is how much we still have to clean up, how toxic this is, and how a little act of legislation doesn't make it go away. It takes generations of cleaning it up. This is not going to go away tomorrow. But we have to be part of the solution today. That's ours. You and I are people of heart, people of consciousness, people of caring. It's ours to start to be part of a solution today. To say, what can I do today to just do my little bit, having no idea where that's going to ripple out to. I love the opening quote that we had for today from Ernest. And it's in kind of quaint language. It's in kind of older language. But it's how much grief would be spared. Untold grief of heart might be relieved by words of cheer and forgiveness. How much does it cost us to smile at a person? How much does it cost to just care a little bit about somebody? And it might make a huge difference in their lives. We all say that we want transformation. We want a world that works for all. And the first thing that normally happens is that the ugliness comes out. One of my teachers used to say that when you start to go for love, love brings up anything unlike itself for the purpose of healing and release. And so the first thing that happens, anybody who's gone through the practitioner track, the first thing that happens is we get aware of what's not working in our lives. Excuse me. It comes up. But what we're doing is we're dredging up the darkness into the light so we can start to then shine the light on it and heal it. Start to see the truth of it and heal it. Florence Scovel Shinn, who wrote the book The Game of Life and How to Play It, an early New Thought writer, says, I now exercise my fearless faith in 3 ways: by thinking, speaking, and acting. I am not moved by appearances, thus appearances must move. I am not moved by appearances, that which is out there. I stay centered in knowing the truth, that this universe is a universe of love, this is a universe of harmony, this is a universe of wholeness. That is the God truth of this universe. And as long as I stay standing in that, firmly in that, then everything else must move. But if I get caught up into believing the appearances, then I start acting in alignment with or in reaction to the appearances, and I forget who I truly am. So our work is to keep our focus on the light. Despite all the screaming for attention of all the doom and gloomers around the country and around the world, our focus, our work, is to keep our attention on the truth, the capital T truth, and upon the light. When we believe in fear, fear will always call for attention. If I buy into fear, if I believe that there's something to be afraid of, if I'm living in a universe that God is all there is, if I really believe that, and this is the time that we get to, that's a nice thing to say on a Sunday morning, right? Do I really believe that? Do I really believe that in the face of everything else? I oftentimes in practitioner sessions work with people, and I'll sometimes come to the point where I'll ask them, so what do you believe about God? And they'll give me what I call the correct religious science answer, okay? But it's not being reflected in their lives. So then we get down to, so what do you really believe? And then it's always something else. And until we know what we really believe, until we know what's really operating down underneath the surface, we are not able to start to make the changes we need to make at the place we need to make them, which is always, first of all, within ourselves. I can't change that out there until I start to heal this within here. Are we willing to be the place that finds truth and peace within? Byron Katie says, a teacher of fear can't bring peace on earth. We've been trying it that way for thousands of years. The person who turns inner violence around, the person who finds peace inside and lives it, is the one who teaches what true peace is. We are waiting for just one teacher. You are the one. Are we willing to be that place that finds truth and peace within and then spreads it? Would you be willing this week to be contagious with truth, with peace, with loving respect for one another and for excuse me, and for people of the world, and for my throat? So this week I want to invite us to do three things. First of all is to be aware, to stay aware, to stay awake. Don't shut down. A friend of mine has long said that she looks at the news as her list of prayer requests. Some of us have gone through a period when we first get into this teaching where it's like we turn off the news and we don't want to pay attention to that out there. And that's fine. And depending on where you're at with that, where you are in your own personal journey, that's fine. But if you're strong enough to where you are willing to be a place that stands in truth and stands in light and stands in love, I invite you to look at the news as your prayer requests, as the place to do your spiritual work. See, a lot of us get to a point where it's like, my life is comfortable, my life is good. What else, is there to do? Okay? You've got an answer. You've got a mission. There's something else to do. So this week, be aware, don't shut down, feel what you're feeling. Those feelings and all this stuff is there anyways. In inner cities, there's a process, or in cities, there's a process where a number of streams and rivers in the cities were kind of put underground for many years. And there's a process called daylighting streams. It's bringing them back up to the surface, back up to where they can be in the daylight. So daylight your feelings. Oftentimes we've had them underground for a long time. Let them come back, gradually back to the surface, and start to be aware of them. Start to be aware of where this lives within you and me. Not with judgment, not with blame, shame, or guilt, but just awareness and saying, oh, that's where that lives within me. Now, what is mine to do to heal that? See, you didn't install that. None of us would consciously choose to be cruel and nasty to other people. As we talked about a couple weeks ago, last week when we were doing forgiveness, actually, We've all done things where we've reacted out of our own hurt, our own fear, our own unskilled behavior. We've all done that. We've all wanted forgiveness when we do that. And so to recognize that that lives within us, to forgive it within us, and to start to not make it okay, because we do need to shift it, but to not hurt ourselves over it, not punish ourselves over it, to just simply notice it and gently allow ourselves to start to say, I'm willing to do better. I'm willing to do better. And if one of us, and two of us, and 10 of us, and 50 or 60 of us start to do that, it starts to spread. I think it was Margaret Mead who said, all it takes for a change in the world is one person, one committed person. So the second thing practice is look within. There's only one life. All of this is happening within one life. You and I are part of it. You and I are the police. You and I are the Black Lives Matter. You and I are all of it. It all lives within us, and we are all part of it. We're all interconnected. So look within. Notice where this does live within me. Can I hold this aspect of me in love too? Can I hold this in love too? It doesn't mean that I have to like what's going on, but can I hold the people involved in love? And recognize the cry for help, the cry for love that is being spoken, that is being yelled, screamed out. I don't have to beat it into submission or kill it. I don't have to suppress it. Can I just hold this aspect of me in love? And finally this week, spread love. Look at people differently. Look at people. Sometimes we don't even just look at people. Take the time to look at people. Take off the blinders of preconceived ideas. We're working within a system that's ages old, ancient system. Can we get out of that system of thinking and start to see each other just as the beloveds that we are? Be kinder to yourself and others. So that's our 3 spiritual practices this week. Number 1, be aware. Number 2, look within, find what lives within, and lovingly begin to let it go. And finally, spread love. Be a contagion for love this week. Would you be willing to participate in that? Great. The world needs us. Right now, the world needs us. I want to close with a quote from Ernest Holmes that is so powerful and so perfect for this time. He says, stay with the one and never deviate from it. Never leave it for a moment. Nothing else can equal this attitude. There's another saying that he has, God plus one is majority. God plus one is a majority. You want to start to shift the world? Get in full alignment with Spirit. Coming back to this reading, he says, to desert the truth in the hour of need is to prove that we do not know the truth. And that sentence, by the way, is all in caps. When he wants to emphasize a point, he puts it all in caps. So to desert the truth in the hour of need is to prove that we do not know the truth. When things look the worst, that is the supreme moment to demonstrate to ourselves that there is no obstructions to the operation of truth. When things look the worst is the best time to work, the most satisfying time. The person who can throw himself with a complete abandon into the limitless sea of receptivity, having cut loose from all apparent moorings, is the one who will always receive the greatest reward. I invite you this week to look this stuff in the face and to stand in the truth and to know that truth. Know it in your heart, know it in your prayers, know it in your consciousness, know it in how you interact with other people, and be what we teach. Be the change in the world. Be the place where we start to create and continue to create a world that works for all. Let's move into prayer. And so in this awareness, in this conviction, in this hour, in this only moment that there ever is, the now moment, I know and remember and stand in the truth that there is only one presence, one infinite presence that is in fact pure love, pure wholeness, perfect harmony, that knows, as we spoke of last week, does not even know sin, that it's not an idea within the mind of the divine, that holds all beings in love. And we are one of that. Each of us, every single one of us on this planet and the planet itself, is one of this infinite life, one of this infinite wholeness, one of this infinite love. And so I speak my word that we become so conscious and so deeply immersed in, ingrained in, and standing in our power of that truth, that we are a beacon of light that shines from right here in Redding around this world, knowing that there are others like us who are also committing to this same journey, to this same truth, and that our lights are enough to bring to light all that needs to be brought for the purpose of healing and release. That this is just simply the process of healing. That is all that it is. This is the process of saying no more of the cancer of racism, no more of the belief in separation, no more of the fear of each other. That we are the place that stands in the light and the love and the truth, that we live in a harmonious universe that is in a conspiracy for its own, through us, highest and greatest good. We stand in love. We stand in light. And we take that and speak that and walk that and act that. We move it into our lives. We move it into the world right here and right now. And in gratitude for the good that comes out of this, because it does. And for the spirit that moves through all of us, because it does. I release this word into a law that moves it into form, moves it into expression, each in our own lives. All we have to do is be willing to say, yes, I am willing to play in that participation of being a space of light and love. Even if I don't know how or where, I am willing. And I will let Spirit move me and guide me. And I trust that infinite presence. And together we affirm that by saying, and so it is. Thank you.